Redditors who have caught their so cheating. How did you catch them? Did you give them another chance? NSW. We went to a Halloween party at a friend's place. I'd known she's had a bit of a crush on one guy who was to attend. At one point late in the night she was quite drunk. She lined up at the washroom immediately after he went in. I kept a bit of an eye on her, and when the bathroom door opened, she went in but he didn't come out. I stood at the door and waited. When it opened and he stumbled out, I immediately went in and confronted her about it. I'm proud of myself for not committing murder that night. We're going through divorce now. 10 years married with 2 kids. I didn't catch him. He called me the next morning crying and told me everything. I respected his honesty, recognized his remorse, and truly believed it would never happen again, so I decided to forgive him. But after he cheated he became incredibly paranoid. He started checking my phone, accusing me of revenge freaking people behind his back. Even got mad when I was assigned to work with a man on a group project in school. I couldn't stand by the fact that he was the one who cheated and I was the one being punished. I had really forgiven him. I wasn't holding his mistake over his head, and my attitude toward him didn't change after the fact at all, but he was driving me away more and more every day. After about a month of this I broke up with him and he completely lost it. This is the other side of the forgiveness coin. It's such a selfless move that sometimes it can totally fuck the selfish person that cheated. He was my first proper boyfriend, and in hindsight he was a pretty crappy boyfriend, but at the time I thought the sun shone out of his ass. So I was crushed when out of the blue he dumped me, with no reason. A week later a group of his friends who'd taken a liking to me contacted me with the real reason for our breakup. Because apparently they'd seen what was happening and they were sick of his crap. Basically he'd been seeing another girl behind my back, and when she found out about me she refused to sleep with him. So he dumped me in the hopes he'd get into her pants. She inevitably told him to get lost, at which point he tried getting back with me. I did not take him back. I've got to give props to the other girl though. I mean, she jerked him around very well and put him through some SHJT to teach him a lesson. I found out while I was deployed. The guy she cheated on me with emailed me and told me everything. Every detail. He apologized and told me he had no idea we were together. I put a hole in the wall, went to smoke an entire pack at the smoke pit, went back to my laptop, and I thanked the guy. My girlfriend was out with a friend, we'll call her Susan, on a girls' night until all hours, and told me she was staying at Susan's place for the night. The next time I see Susan, she pulled me aside and told me that they actually went to the house of a guy my girlfriend worked with. We'll call him Patrick, because that's his name. Susan goes on to tell me that she woke up in the middle of the night and found my girlfriend having sex with Patrick on the couch, while Patrick's girlfriend was asleep in the bedroom. I thanked her for letting me know, then went home and told my GF to pack her crap. Your ex's friend is a total lady bro. I was deployed to Iraq and my wife was being distant for a few weeks. During my deployment she mentioned several times in phone calls this contractor she was working with and how much they click and all. I trusted her and never thought she was cheating, but I joked about it and we laughed it off. I even met the guy while home on leave and he shook my hand thanking me for my service. A month later back in Iraq from leave one particular night I couldn't get a hold of her. I called and no answer. I am very much a trust my gut type of guy and I had a sinking sickly feeling of something was up. I never was one of checking or sneaking into her accounts, but we shared passwords with each other. I decided to check her Facebook account. There was nothing in her inbox, but there was one lonely message in her outbox she didn't delete to the contractor guy she worked with. I will always love you. That was when my world came crashing down. Shortly afterwards she finally calls me back, not knowing I know, and she confesses she is pregnant with his baby. I couldn't get a hold of her because she was with her mom confessing what she had done that night, but I remember punching a wall and straining or broke my thumb and leaving my barracks knocking over a porta potty. Thankfully nobody was in it. There was a month or two before I was to be home and we tried working it out being distant. Once I got home I decided to give it a chance. She told me she would stop talking to him and request him to be removed from her project. I met her at her office one day for lunch and she wasn't in her office yet. While waiting for her I saw she had her email pulled up, but not her usual email. Turns out she had a secret email account with him. After that I was done and out. The one thing some people don't know is that there can be layers to unravel when your SO is cheating. My doubt started when I took my SOS phone on accident, unlocked it, and bam, texts that were pretty inappropriate. I confronted her about it and she tried to talk her way out of it, but they were just texts. So I told her to just stop doing it and everything would be fine. Unfortunately, I found out a pretty annoying way. I was chilling at home and I get a message from a really good friend if I wanted to go laser tag. We are in college. It's what boring college kids do. I decline and just go about my evening. The next day I am talking to that exact friend and he lets me know that my SO and this other guy, that everyone also knew, the guy she was ending the text to, were being a little bit too close. I confront her and bingo, she was cheating on me. Ended soon after that. I am 99% sure she will see this, but she still talks to some friends of mine from time to time, and hearing about how much heck she is going through, and how miserable she is just makes me feel so much better. Her getting out of my life was the best thing to happen to me. The sex was not great either. My favorite part of the post is how you said the sex was not great either, after you said you're 99% sure she's going to see this. Frick you, hard to find 66's ex. Surprise visit from out of town. She's not home. Well, it was a surprise and I wasn't sure of her plans for the evening, so I go to my mom's house to wait a while. A few hours later I go back to my GF's apartment, but she's still not there. On a hunch I drive by her male friend's place and sure enough her car is there. I get an uncomfortable feeling about it, but try not to worry. So I go back to my mom's place to get some sleep. Up early. I go over to GF's again. Not there. Drive around the block. She's still at Fucknugget's place. I never like that pose. At this point I'm P. I go back to my mom's and call my GF's home phone. The message was something like, I came into town last night and we need to talk. A few hours later she rings the doorbell and we go upstairs to talk. She confesses that she cheated. I was in love with this woman, so I accepted her apology and gave her another chance. We stayed together for a few months, but I came to realize I couldn't forgive her so easily, especially since she was still hanging around that guy. So we broke up. The end. I had been dating a guy for a few months. We didn't have a title on it, but a couple months before the incident we had decided that we had no interest in seeing others and were exclusive. He decides he wants to buy an iPad, and a few days later I asked if I could see it to see what apps he had, and if there were any I might like to put on my own. I notice an app called Meet Me that has around 5 or 6 notifications on it. I honestly had no idea what it was, so I opened it. It went straight to his inbox, which was full of messages from other women. Just as I saw that, he asked if I was ready to go to the grocery store, so I left it there. He could tell something was up at the grocery store, but I didn't bring it up in public, obviously. Get back to his place, and I open up the app again. I said, "What's this app on here called Meet Me? I've never heard of that before." He said, "Oh, it's just a social networking site, kind of like Facebook. It's really big with my friends from up in Oregon." So I open a message that says something like, "Hey girl, when are you gonna come see me so I can play with those titties," or something along those lines. I said, "Oh, so this blonde girl Shelly is gonna fly in all the way from Oregon so you can play with her titties? How sweet of her." Then we get into a huge fight, with him mostly claiming that I'm not his girlfriend so he can still do things with other girls, seemingly forgetting about the exclusivity talk. It ends with him confessing that he did it because he's in love with me and those strong feelings scared him so he turned to other women, but he had never actually met up with any of them. He also cried, so that was cool. I gave him another chance, but we crashed and burned not too long afterwards cause I couldn't trust his sketchy butt. My ex just started grad school after being out of undergrad for about 2 years. We had been going out for nearly a year. She would introduce me to a lot of her classmates and stuff and we'd start to hang out with some of them. The people she had made the best friends with were guys, which I didn't have too much of a problem with. Most of them seemed cool. One of the guys she was probably the closest with and she started talking about this guy all the time. He had just gotten married a couple months prior I guess. I met him a couple times, and he seemed a hint of douchy, but whatever. A couple weeks go by and she's just starting to act different. It's our anniversary weekend and I have dinner plans for us. get a nice card, all that kind of stuff. She has to cancel on me last minute because she has to study. That weekend I stay at her apartment because I needed to do something downtown the next day and I was not living around there. She had to go to her parents' house for some reason. She left her laptop and I took it to go on Gmail. Her Gmail was logged in and I know I really shouldn't have done it, but I started to poke around just a little. I felt terrible while doing it, but I could feel some distance between us and she wouldn't talk to me about whatever it was. She had deleted the majority of her chat conversations, but must have overlooked one of them. It was a quite obscene convo with that married guy about what they had done that weekend and many other times before that. So I took the card I had gotten her, wrote "frick you" over all the words telling her how I had loved her, and set it on her computer with that conversation still open, and left. I had a boyfriend who died in a wreck. At his wake I had an even dozen women tell me they shared my pain because they had been his lover too. No second chance, not even to kill him. That's the freaking worst because you can never get answers. One of my first ever boyfriends died. We were young teens. I found out he was seeing another girl at the same time. The worst part is that I hated him but I loved him and was grieving for him. I wanted him back but I didn't want to take him back, and I knew I could never get answers. My first boyfriend cheated on me with his ex at least twice, but I didn't actually find out until years after we broke up. He and I got together for drinks and to catch up, and I just flat out asked him if he'd slept with her. He couldn't answer me, and that was answer enough. Looking back, I knew in the back of my mind something was up, and I should have accepted that and moved on sooner. The paintings she did of him, the way he'd disappear for days after seeing her, heck. He drove to my school in her car to tell me we should take a break. Ugh. It makes me angry to think about how naive I was. I was trying to be the cool girlfriend who didn't mind her boyfriend hanging out with his ex, because they were just friends. TL. DR spent a crap ton of time with his ex. I was dumb. Naive perhaps, but hardly dumb. You yourself said he was your first. Didn't cheat myself, but busted a guy accidentally. Was at a dinner party when this vaguely familiar guy walks in with his smoking hot so. We are introduced and I said that we had actually met before. It basically went like this. Yes, we've met before. No, I don't think so. Sure, you went to X university, right? Yep, you used to date my old neighbor, Jenna. No, number. That wasn't me. Sure it was. You transferred from Y University and played basketball. We had a couple of chats because you know Tim and Ed. At this point is so seething and storms out of the house. He gives me a "wow did you just frick me" look and heads out after her. Turns out he was cheating with my neighbor for years. She always suspected, but never had any proof, until I came along. I understand this one worked out, but in general, if you run into someone who is with their so you probably shouldn't bring up people they used to date. She texted me instead of him then tried to play it off as if she was joking around to see my reaction. I have never in my 29 years of existence texted the wrong person. How does that even happen? I've texted the wrong person tons of times. It really can happen. Not saying that it did, but it's possible. My girlfriend actually just sent a picture of herself in a really low-cut shirt to her little sister instead of me, haha. I had been married to her for about 7 months when she got a new job, her first real job out of college. After a couple of months, she started talking sporadically about this guy at work who was funny, cool, etc. I'm not jealous, nor did I have any reason to doubt her. However, I did notice that all of a sudden she is a huge texter, which she hadn't been prior. Texting all of the time, and doing so sneakily. One day she asks if I would be okay with her hanging out with him outside of work. Same thing. I'm not controlling and I trusted her. They continue to hang out occasionally. The texting continues. All while my stress level is skyrocketing. I break down and begin checking her texts whenever I get the opportunity. Things seem fishy, but I never see anything definitive. I get to the point where it's clear something is going wrong with our relationship. She is very much distant, clearly sneaky, and getting caught in dumb lies. I eventually confront her about it and she adamantly denies that anything is going on, saying that she needed that friendship as an outlet to feel independent. I wanted to believe her, but got more and more suspicious. I nearly became obsessive with checking her email. Facebook, and texts, which I hated doing the whole time, but unless you've been in the same position, you can't really understand the draw of being able to access that info. My findings grew more and more suspicious, but I still never saw that definitive proof that there was anything more than flirting going on. Hindsight is 20/20. Where there's smoke, there's fire. One day she comes home from hanging out with him and I notice stubble rash on her chest. That was the definitive proof I needed. I point this out. She turns bright red, and I walk out the door. We had a long talk the next day, and I ultimately decided I could forgive her and work through this, provided she cut off all contact with him and agreed to work on things. She was still reluctant to remove him from her life. I still had the feeling that she was meeting up with him behind my back and got confirmation of this in an anonymous letter in my work mailbox from a co-worker of ours, saying she saw her and this guy out in public being far too frisky. I moved out for good after that. Lesson learned: if you're suspicious, with reason, there's something wrong. Whether or not your partner has had a physical affair, what they're doing is causing distress for you, and if they aren't willing to resolve that, they're up to no good. I guess I say this with a grain of salt, because some control freak would ruin this generalization. My ex-boyfriend and I had been dating for 2 years when he cheated on me. It was his birthday and we're supposed to be going out for dinner that night. I decided to surprise him with his birthday present earlier that day. Went over to his house since he was off from work, and saw that he had left the door unlocked, so I went in and called out for him, but he didn't answer. His TV volume was turned up really loud, so I went up to his room just to catch him pile driving my cheer captain. There was no confrontation. I left quietly, though I did come back to stick nails in his tires out of spite. He begged me to forgive him, but I declined. I won't lie, I was tempted, but it really hurt. To give him everything, and I mean everything. He was my first. Lucky me. I could emotionally, for him to turn around and betray me like that really hurt. I will say that holding grudges did me no good. I was able to forgive him just for closure purposes. Roommates in college confronted her after they knew she had someone over while I was out of town. She convinced them that she would tell me what happened. After I returned and 24 hours passed, roommates told me because they have her time. I kicked her out immediately and ended it. About a month later, she moved into the same building, same floor, across the hall. Her door was about 8 feet from mine. If a freaking college town with tens of thousands of apartments. And no, it was not to see me. We talked once after the breakup and it was truly over. My wife had been acting distant for a few weeks and suddenly started meeting a female friend of her a night a week or so. I was suspicious, especially when the friend called looking for her on a night they were supposed to be together. A few nights later I found some pictures and text messages on her phone. We argued and I ended up going to my buddy's house at 3 in the morning. God bless him. The next day we argued some more, and of course it's my fault. After all, I didn't pay her enough attention. We went to counseling and I stayed because of our kids, but I've never forgiven her, and honestly I wonder if staying was a mistake. Kids aren't stupid, and will likely pick up on any tension or distant body language. That's disregarding the psychological impact for you having to stay in a situation that isn't fair on you. I know it goes against modern convention, but sometimes you're better off separating if you're only still together for the kids. I'm late to the party. September of last year, I got a new house on base. My wife and I moved in and everything was going peachy. One of my best friends fell onto some hard times and didn't really have a place to go. So I said he could live with me. Who doesn't want to live with their best friend? And my wife was cool with it too. About a month later, I come home from work early, and some suspicious stuff was happening. But it could mostly be explained by just an unlucky coincidence. It just didn't really sit right with me though, and I amicably kicked my buddy out of the house. The next week, I had to drive about an hour away for work, and my wife needed to use the car too. So, we were just gonna see if the guy would let us use his car. He was fine with it. Since I still wasn't truly comfortable with him over, I set up cameras. Every device in my house with a camera became a motion detector. I returned home from work, changed, ran some errands and got back to the house at about 1900. Sat down, faced my laptop away, and started looking through the pictures. I saw pictures of them fricking on my couch. I turned the screen to my wife and calmly said, "Get the frick out of my house." I called my command to tell them what happened. As of a couple weeks ago, he just got out of the brig. She's back in her hometown, and I'm waiting for the divorce to finalize. Frick them. My ex-husband, who was rarely ever mean or got angry with me, was suddenly yelling at me all the time and finding fault in every little thing. Essentially, he was gaslighting me, trying to push every button and make me snap. I told my mom about it and she said, "Honey, I think he is cheating. Find out for sure." About a week later, he was being a jerk, and when he went to take out the trash, I decided his jerkiness was justification to snoop on his computer, and I immediately saw where he was iming some lady about putting the final nails in the coffin of our relationship. I actually feel really bad about the snooping. Other than it confirmed I got a chance to snoop more in depth a few days later. Needed 100% confirmation. Found out he had one-way plane tickets to the fugly troll city, and he wasn't going to tell me he was leaving until he was gone. Much later, I found out he told all our mutual friends that I was abusive and he had to leave to protect himself. I want to barf every time I think about how many of them bought into his BS, and even more so, how much I had bought into it. Meanwhile, my reality was that when I found out he had been having an online relationship since, no less than 6 months into the marriage, I went to the library to research how to deal with his infidelity, found myself a therapist to help me cope with it, and sat on the information that he was cheating until I could confront him with a third party present. And second chances? No chance. He changed his flight to leave the night of the confrontation. Now, there's how you lose a coward, ladies, and start to get your self-confidence back. The marriage was rocky once he met a girl in his summer session course and was studying with her while I was gone at work. Sometimes she'd come early in the morning, like 6 AM, and then be there when I got home at 9 PM. He would make her breakfast, lunch, and dinner with the groceries I was buying for us with my hard-earned money. I put my foot down and said he had to limit his time with her, that my needs weren't being met. He was withholding sex for weeks at a time, citing that he was too tired or stressed. He said I was overreacting, that nothing was happening between them, and that I was just trying to sabotage his career goals. I read his chats with her, and he was pouring his heart out about our troubles, but there was no evidence of cheating. I sent him to sleep on the futon the day I came home from work to have lunch and found them boxing in the backyard shirtless. In the following months, I tolerated none of his crap. But what really got me was when I happened upon a pros and cons list comparing me to his ex, his study buddy, and some other girl I hadn't heard of yet. I also found love letter drafts to 2 girls thrown in the trash, not even hidden. Needless to say, I ended it right quick and kicked him out. I was actually pretty merciful and let him live in the garage for 3 weeks, but he definitely didn't deserve it. Last I heard, he's dating the 3rd girl on the list and living with his study buddy. Sucker. For some reason, the cheating story is my most told story on Reddit. Oh well, my so and I had hit rock bottom in our relationship. We had gone through a hectic move during an already tumultuous year. I felt myself drifting apart from him, although he tried quite a few times to reignite our spark. Proposed, among other things. I just had a lot going on in my life, mostly career stress, that I was afraid to confide in him and I kept inside. In addition, he had started letting himself go a bit. Didn't gain any weight, but he outgrew his look. We had been together since my late teens, his very early 20s, in a way that I found unattractive. I didn't tell him this, but I definitely didn't pursue him physically and he got, understandably, depressed. I had fallen out of love, but I didn't want to let him go. Fast forward a few months and he left town for a business trip and ended up cheating on me with a co-worker who had just put in her 2 weeks and I'm reading between the lines of his story a bit here, was likewise in a bad place in her personal life. He said that in his drunken haze, he had been drinking a lot. See, depression. She looked and acted to him like me, back when I needed him. His words, he wasn't able to finish the deed, and told me immediately when he got home. He deleted her contact info from his phone. He leaves everything out in the open, so yes, I'm sure. And we took it as an opportunity to reset. We both still loved each other even though I had lost that in love feeling. He reproposed and got a tattoo to remember the whole incident. His choice. Our romantic life has been back on track ever since. No, it hasn't happened again. Sometimes good people hit a breaking point, and sometimes good people frick up. I'll probably be downvoted for going against the Reddit hive mind, but there's that. Everyone's life is different. I think what happened to you happens to more people than commonly thought. I have hopes for you both, internet stranger. Ex and I were 18 at the time. First girlfriend. High school sweethearts. She confessed to me the first time she cheated on her birthday the first week into college. I forgave. 3 months later I hear from 4 of her friends that she cheated on me again with several other guys at a club during girls' night out. Ran and left after that with my mangled heart. I caught my ex 1 month after we got married. I had the day off of work and my computer was doing an update, so I woke his screen up to check the weather forecast. His browser was open to an email account I didn't know existed, and there was a message from Sarah with details of what she loved about the last time they were together and how she couldn't wait to see him in a few days. I didn't call him right away. My curiosity got the best of me and I went through the folders in the email account. I found registrations for Adult Friend Finder, Alt, and numerous EL ads responses. I went into a slight state of shock and called him. He came home immediately and told me he needed help and that he would never do it again. Asked me if I thought anyone would believe me. Reminded me his business depended on his reputation. So we went to counseling. He kept cheating. A year and a half later, after finding photographic evidence of recent activity, I walked and began the really ugly divorce process. December 2013 was my 5-year divorce anniversary. In October 2014 I'll finish paying it off. Feels dang good. I have an interesting story here. One day out of the corner of my eye I caught my then GF text "I'll always love you." Seemed a bit too strong for family and it bothered me. Eventually curiosity took over and I checked her phone. She was texting her ex including pictures. Boo, she didn't physically cheat on me. He was many states away and unemployed with no car. I told her she had 2 choices. Call and tell him they were done and she could try to rebuild my trust, or I could dump her on the spot. She called him. Apparently he didn't know about me, so he did the work for me, calling her a BETC, leaving me as the white knight. She eventually left me a year later, but things were still pretty good. Left me for her math tutor but told me they grew close and therefore wanted to break things off with me. No cheating. They are getting married now and I still see her from time to time. We mutually respect each other, so in the end things turned out okay. Summary: gave a second chance. Turned out okay. This is one of the only stories on this thread that ended well for the person telling it. I met her on a chance encounter while working for a music festival in the summer of 2011. We were both 20 and were both seeing the end of our first romantic relationships. We were trying to cope with the heartache. She had trouble letting go of her old boyfriend and never actually broke up with him. I understood though, he was her first, but I did not understand enough. I made mistakes. I seduced her. As summer faded into fall we were dating, and though I had been warned, if she'll do it for ya, she'll do it to ya, I was enamored with her beauty and would not heed to wisdom. It didn't take long, maybe 3 months, but I got what was coming to me. One night she called to ask my plans for the evening and I let her know. "Sorry miss, I'm going to be in the library tonight, but you shouldn't let that stop you from going out. It's Friday." Term was coming to a close and essays needed attention, but that was no reason for her to not have a good Friday night. I encouraged her to go out with her friends, and off she went. The next day she told me she had gone to a party with her friends and something about drama majors. They're too touchy with one another. One thing led to another. She fooled around with one of her male peers and told me the next day. I don't regret dumping her immediately. I only regret being the piece of crap that helped her to cheat first. It's funny though, she had never shown anger towards me until that day. After all, how could I not understand? Actresses and actors are just like that. Respect to both of you. She was open enough to admit it, which is huge, and you were smart enough to get out. I think people like her are actually able to get away from the cheaters always cheat stereotype because she knows she did something wrong. It's actually the people that seem to always justify it that are the worst. Also, I enjoyed reading your writing. Good style. Post more often. I don't know why I come into these threads. My fiancée and I live in different cities right now while I'm doing my masters. She's never given me any reason to doubt her and we keep in such close contact that it would be pretty difficult for her to cheat. Still, threads like these break my heart. I feel you. AskReddit threads like this are killing me. I was in a long-term relationship with a guy and everything was going perfectly. Then I found out I was pregnant and he was a totally different person. He treated me like the dirt on his shoes. Thinking it would all correct itself once he met the baby, I decided to stay. He started becoming distant and was unable to come off his phone for more than a minute. After saying he was going out to 3 work parties in 1 week, no special holiday or event at the time, I stopped believing and trusting him. One night, while he was asleep, I took his phone and read his texts. I wouldn't usually do this, but I was losing hope. He was stringing along 4 other girls and was actually in a relationship with 2 of them. When I confronted him about it, he claimed he wasn't a cheat and had never cheated emotionally or physically, even though I told him that I had seen the messages. Needless to say, our relationship ended very quickly and he continues to cheat on his new partners. I have no reason to believe he ever cheated on me before I got pregnant, but I suppose I will never know the true answer to that. I had suspicions for a while. She was using a lot of drugs with one person in particular. I managed to get this guy's phone number and politely asked him to stop contacting her. I also asked her. She said she did, but I found out she would still see him occasionally. She assured me over and over they were just hanging out and doing drugs. She kept on telling me she was trying to get sober, but it truly didn't seem like it. One day, in some anger, I texted the guy and he responded with something like this: "Shut the frick up. I could break your heart with just a couple of facts." So I promptly approached my girlfriend about this. She admitted to not being fully honest about their relationship. That was the understatement of the year. They were using H and fricking each other for 6 months. I stopped contacting her. She ended up getting clean and sober. I decided to take her back. We had 3 more years of a very healthy and stable relationship. Then she dumped me because she wanted to be more independent. She is not a good person, sober or not. She started bringing this new friend around a lot. Began to suspect, but who wants to jump right on that card? Have a little faith. No need to jump the gun. Yeah. No. Eventually it got to the point they were doing things in front of me, so I called her on it. Apparently, that was none of my business. Yeah, I'm out. Peace. Came to learn in the coming weeks she was not only cheating but had basically started a whole new relationship with one of our friends. Behind my back and right in front of me, and I just didn't see until after I should have, because it was with a girl. I've never really trusted anyone like I trusted her since. Sounds very teenagery. I was dating my most recent ex-girlfriend 2 years ago during my 2nd year of college. She and I were smoking weed and watching a movie when she went to the bathroom. Her phone vibrated and the message was from a guy with a bunch of hearts and kisses in the message. I saw it and my heart fell into my chest. I asked her what was up and to pick between us. She chose to be single and 2 months later began a relationship with him. Long story short, first wife and I grew distant after only a couple of years. Much younger guy was hanging around that she told me was her cousin. After a while I got suspicious and installed a keylogger on our family computer to gain access to her email. Found proof that he was more than just a cousin. She blamed me. I blamed myself. Begged her to come back. She wouldn't stop seeing dude but kept saying she didn't want a divorce. After a few months I finally grew a pair. Filed divorce papers. Took back her car and put the house on the market. A few weeks later I was officially single and packed up all my belongings and moved to California. For a long time I was angry and bitter. Then time went by and I got over it and remarried the best women in the world. The best part of the story came 6 years later when I saw my ex again at a wedding for the first time. I knew she had a string of failed relationships and was unhappy. She came up to me and said, "It seems like you are happy now." I said, "I'm very happy. Thank you. Best revenge ever is to move on and find happiness with someone who truly loves and respects you." I saw this bee looking at an answer sheet in her pocket, so I just snitched and broke up with her. Frick a cheater. I was chilling on the couch at his place when I spied a girl's hair tie on the coffee table. It wasn't mine. I stared at him and asked whose it was. His face turned white and he started sputtering that it was a friend's. Which friend? I know all his friends. Some girl I met who came to borrow a DVD. I know his DVD collection. He couldn't tell me which one it was. Knowing he was caught, he went down on his knees and started begging for forgiveness, saying he met some girl and invited her to his flat, and they made out for 10 minutes before he realized it was wrong. Balls. But I would never find out the truth. I felt numb. I should have known better. Freaking man W. Oh yeah, I found out on our 1-year anniversary. I read it on Reddit. Really? I've been going out with someone since grade 9. I'm a freshman in university now. I came back from a trip where I was the only guy in a group of 6 girls. Keep in mind this was a trip for club executives, and I didn't do a dang thing. I got her a nice necklace from Ottawa, come back and have dinner at a nice restaurant on Monday where she drops questions like "Are you happy?" etc. and drops the bomb about how she's been cheating since day 1. This is the girl I wanted to spend my life with and get married to. Life's a B:. Better to find out now than after you put the ring on it. Look at the bright side. You're now a single freshman at university. He told me while blacked out drunk. I asked her. She admitted it. Then I found him on Adult Friend Finder and going through CL ads. Butthole would use my laptop. Then of course the weird messages this girl would leave on his FB. They're very happy now. Divorce is almost final. She was assigned to another state and I had to stay where I was for school. She told me about this friend or whatever and I got a little suspicious. She told me 3 months later that she cheated. I went to where she was living and stayed there for a week and a half to work on our marriage. I grabbed her phone one night when she was sleeping, because she would always go to the bathroom when she got a message, and saw that she was still texting him and that he didn't know I was there. So I texted him to stop talking to my wife. We got in a huge fight and she leaves the room to go talk to him and they had a huge fight. We're done and they're done. A month later we start to reconcile and she does the same crap with another guy that she was stationed with. Yes, I blame myself for being an idiot and giving a known cheater a second chance and burning myself. We're still kind of friends today and I've forgiven her, but I will never forget and use that experience for any future relationships that I will have. Picture this. They were both butt naked, banging on the bathroom floor. I was living with 3 employees of mine at the time. I had been with one of the girls for 6 months but somehow the other 2 didn't know. I was trying to keep it from them as I didn't want it to get in the way of business. I was crazy about her but didn't want to mess up the business. One night, she went out for work drinks with one of the 2 oblivious housemates as she was in his team in the office. They arrived back around 2 AM and were at it in the living room. I came down and was torn between fighting with or leaving them. He wasn't guilty of anything as he had no idea that we were together, so I didn't see that it was fair to take it out on him. Long story short, I broke up with her and they started dating. I had to watch them together at work for a year before they moved away. Ultimately she cheated on him. Proves the theory that if they cheated for you, they'll cheat on you. It was really tough being their boss and watching them being together. Also, don't live with employees. Reading this thread, combined with my own experiences, makes me realize I'd pay a hefty sum of money if there was a Carfax equivalent for cheating people. If I could find an algorithm for keeping the reports honest, I'd be all over that business plan. He asked me to text someone for him. I saw a number I didn't recognize and read the messages. They were pretty sexual. I asked him about it. He said he was sorry. I asked him why he would do it. He said he felt I didn't pay any attention to him. I ended it. I think it's unfair for the person cheated on and the one cheated with. She started crying when I asked who she was texting. We were in bed after sex. She was smiling and texting someone. I looked over and said, "Who are you texting?" cause I was curious. She slams her phone under the pillow and looks at me with kinda teary eyes, obviously scared. So I ask again. She grabs her phone and runs to the bathroom, locks the door, cries and tells me I wouldn't understand why she was texting him. So there I was, confused as heck, putting the pieces of her actions together for a few minutes before it clicked. I went berserk a bit, told her to leave and my dad drove her home. I had a car but living with parents. This was high school. After this I forgave her 3 times. First, after this, I told her I loved her and if she loved me too we can make it work. Friend sent me a picture of her and a guy making out. Second time, I forgave her because she came clean, told me everything and begged for me back. I was madly in love with her, so I accepted. Drove to her house one night to see a guy dropping her off with a goodnight kiss. Third time was a week after that. She came begging again, and like a fool I said okay. I'm not even sure why. We had sex for like a month, but there was nothing else there. I was hollow and I dumped her. I walked into a party that he knew I was coming to, dumb butt, and saw him touching another girl. He chased after me. I forgave him because I'm also a dumb butt, and he did it again twice and was texting other girls while I was out of country. Then it was over. Good riddance. It wasn't terribly heartbreaking in the grand scheme of things due to the myriad of events involved in the relationship, but it was still a frustrating experience. He'd started dating me when he was 18 and I was 26 yet. Cradle robber. Probably should have been a warning sign for me. He told me he couldn't connect with guys his own age. We're fanny bandits. And he had a lot in common with me. It also helped that I had pretty low self-esteem and he was alarmingly attractive. I fell for him really fast, and he had me convinced it was mutual, but he jerked me around a lot and we were barely in a full-blown relationship. He told me a few times that a rule of us settling down together was that I had to consent to a three-way because he wanted to try it. If I ever told a bad joke, he would laugh and tell me the joke was so terrible that he was going to break up with me. Likewise, if he did the same and I made that joke, he'd say something akin to "That's okay. There's guys lined up around the block who wanna date me." He only wound up making my self-esteem worse, which is why I shrugged off the following. His dating profile stating that he was only looking for friends for now. All the talks he would have with me about people coming over to visit and trying to hook up with him. The time he told me he got a sizable sex toy and loved how it felt, even though I knew he had no money or means to get to the store he claimed he bought it from. We wound up being off again on again a few times, and after we got back together in the summer, I was telling a mutual friend of ours about my optimism that he finally toned it down, when his friend linked me to an online forum where my ex posted a very detailed description of his sexcapades with his new 46-year-old boyfriend. I took it harder than I should have, but told him off and severed the connection, which did wonders for how I felt about myself. I met someone new, and about a year later, found out he'd been through no less than a dozen boyfriends in that time, and all of his relationships ended terribly and dramatically. So that was a plus. Came home from vacation in London. 6:30 am. I'd been awake 30 hours and just wanted to sleep. There was an extra set of feet in the bed. I moved out that day and laughed at her the whole time since she couldn't afford the apartment without my share of the rent, and my name wasn't on the agreement. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video.